The mysterious object seen above the pyramids. The ancient Egyptians were a sophisticated civilization that developed over several thousand years from around 3000 BCE to 30 BCE. There are several reasons why they were able to achieve such a high level of sophistication, including a combination of natural resources, organization, religion, science, and technology, and trade and diplomacy. Many agree that the ancient Egyptians were way ahead of their time. They were able to create incredible structures that have stood up to the test of time, able to read the constellations to an incredible degree of precision, and create giant monoliths that outweigh some of our biggest modern-day machinery. Not only have their developments puzzled and astounded researchers and archaeologists for decades, but every year more and more information comes forth showing the incredible might and intellectual prowess of their ancient culture. Going back several years ago, an interesting photograph was captured on a live camera that was pointed towards the pyramids. Upon closer inspection, it was noted that a large sphere-like object could be seen hovering above the ground. The object looks to be an almost perfect circle and doesn't look like it could be a smudge on the camera. Not many people have seen this photograph, and so it's been hard to track down what camera this came from, but the story goes that the object showed up on a random live camera that was pointed towards the pyramids. These cameras allow people to view the pyramids from the comfort of their homes. It first appeared online back in 2009, and since then, people can't seem to agree on what it shows. Interestingly, this isn't the first time that such an object has been captured above Egypt, and those who've studied this phenomena have said that these glowing orbs are well known. As of right now, it's up for debate what these objects are, but many who've encountered them have said that they have no visible propulsion system, but seem to have the ability to travel at extremely fast speeds. All throughout Egyptian mythologies are references to their supposed gods, assisting the early Egyptian civilization by providing vast amounts of untapped knowledge about the universe, as well as providing gifts to humans to help assist with future endeavors. One of the biggest pieces of evidence for this intervention pertains to the establishment of the first Egyptian civilizations that centered around the creation of agriculture and specialized. Many Egyptologists and archaeological researchers believed that prior to the development of large cities, the early Egyptian people lived in scattered and small tribes all throughout the region. Strangely enough, this did not change until there was an introduction of what would come to be the basis of the Egyptian religious practices, which essentially meant that the majority of the breakthroughs in agriculture, urban development, and a unified government did not begin forming until after the Egyptian religion was established, which presumably played a key role in these developments for the early civilization. Interestingly, assistance in agriculture can be found when looking through Egyptian mythologies in reference to gifts provided by their gods, such as that of the domesticated cat. According to the Egyptian mythological record, the domesticated cat came from the Egyptian gods as a peace offering after the goddess of the sun, Hathor, transformed into Sekhmet, of which is physically represented by the cat species, and went on an unending rampage against humanity. The domesticated cat was supposedly genetically modified by the Egyptian gods in order to be seen as the most perfect companion for humanity in its times of need. Fortunately enough, it turned out to work perfectly, as the sudden appearance of the domesticated cat allowed agriculture to flourish in ways that had never previously been seen before. This was due to the fact that the domesticated cat would eat the vermin that would otherwise spread disease in a city, ravage the local crops, and eat stored grains. Oddly enough, scientists have said that even more has now been understood about the feline in our modern era, with researchers uncovering that the cat's purr is at a specific frequency of which allows rapid cell growth and healing in both humans and felines in the case of dramatic injury. Interestingly, it has also been found in the archaeological record that the domesticated cat, for reasons completely unknown and not entirely understood, did not appear in the fossil record until the establishment of the Egyptian civilization and arising in that region. As of right now, many aspects of the ancient Egyptians have been disputed in the modern day, with some researchers saying that the ancient Egyptian civilization was more advanced than we realize. Trail camera captures a mysterious creature. All across North America are reports of a creature that's been given the name of the Dog Man. Those who have encountered the creature have described it as looking like a strange werewolf-like creature and seems to possess supernatural strength and abilities. One of the issues with these types of stories is the lack of evidence to back them up. But now, a photograph is being shared around social media, allegedly showing the dog-man creature. It's hard to track down its origins. The image was first seen on various groups that investigates mysterious creatures. The story goes that one night someone was looking through their trail camera that was pointed towards their garden. After a while, they could see something moving in the bushes towards the left-hand side of the screen. Brushing it off as everyday wildlife, they didn't bother to look closer, as seeing nature in their backyard wasn't uncommon. However, after a few minutes, the individual noticed that this creature was big, and said that they had never seen anything of this size before. The animals soon left the scene, but the trail camera owner couldn't wrap their head around what they had just witnessed. They then decided to download the video and brighten it on their computer. It was only after doing this that they discovered a large dog-like creature had been there the whole time, looking towards the house where the person had been watching the camera from. Those who have seen the image have said that it's one of the best pieces of evidence of the dogman creature. As of today, there's been various people who have come forward with their encounters with this mysterious beast. Descriptions of the dogman monster often overlap with ancient superstitious sightings and European legends of werewolf-like entities. The dogman is described as standing at a height between 7 to 10 feet in height, having long legs, possessing the head of a wolf and an enlarged humanoid body. Although many sightings of the dogman are often lumped together with sightings of Harry, the creatures are remarkably different in behavior. Within many of the dogman sightings, the creature acts with increased aggression and will often chase and attack cars, people, other animals, and livestock. The dogman of northwestern Michigan, Wexford County lumberjack sighting. Back in 1887, the oldest reported American sighting of the dogman would be first recorded out in the woodlands of Wexford County, located within the state of Michigan, and this was by two reputable eyewitnesses of the community. According to the local report, Wexford County hosted large lumber camps, referred to by locals as the Northern Lumber Camps, which helped to employ the majority of the nearby residents. It was after a long day of work when two lumberjacks noticed a large wolf prowling around the camps, staying a few feet outside of its perimeter and sniffing the nearby equipment. Worried that the wolf might attack one of the men while they were standing alone, the two lumberjacks began to chase the wolf away from the compound, following the creature deeper into the woodlands, and chasing it into a hollow log. When the animal crawled into the log, one of the men debated on just leaving it alone as the animal was far more terrified of them than they were of it. However, the other man believed that it would be best for them to get rid of the wolf entirely, as it would be too dangerous to ignore given the close proximity of the camps and the fact that several of the workers have stood outside of the camp alone while drinking and could become potential victims. At this point, the men agreed to prod the wolf out of the log and chase it as far away as they could to prevent it from coming back. One of the men grabbed a long branch and began poking it into the hollow log, forcing the wolf out of the log on the other side. Oddly enough, once the wolf was forced out of the hollow log, it let out an unearthly scream and the animal refused to run any further and began growling at the men while making its strange screams. As the lumberjacks got closer to the animal while shouting at it to scare it away, the stood up on its hind legs. It was at this moment that the men noticed that the wolf appeared to have had the body of a man covered in fur, large muscular legs, and began to grow in size. Fearing for their lives, the two men ran away from the creature and quit their jobs at the Northern Lumber Camp and told everyone of what they had seen. Originally, the other lumberjacks and the camp managers refused to believe the story, claiming that it was nothing more than a prank, were unsatisfied with their pay and working conditions. However, as the years went on, the original claims of the two men were taken seriously, as other lumberjacks would claim to have witnessed the creature while standing outside alone. To this day, the Wexford County legends claim that the creature is sighted once every 10 years. A summarization of the Wexford legend would first see publication in the Tourist's Traveling Guide, Traveling Michigan's Sunset Coast, which would write the following two paragraphs surrounding the event. Dog Man is a monster firmly entrenched in the law of northern lumber camps and backwoods from the mid-1800s to today. Dog Man walks upright on hind legs and looks a bit like his monster relative Wolfman. 1887 is the first reported sighting, and lumberjacks in Wexford County spotted an animal they believed to be a dog, and for lack of anything better to do, they began chasing it. To escape its pursuers, tormented animal ran inside a hollow log. One of the lumberjacks grabbed a stick and poked inside the log. The creature let out an unearthly scream, crawled out of the log, and stood upright. There, face to face and eye to eye with the men, stood a creature with a man's body and a dog's head. The terrified men broke camp and never returned to the area. From then on, the beast made an appearance about every 10 years. Many future reports and publishings surrounding the legend have often mislabeled the year of the encounter, claiming that the Wexford County sighting originally occurred back in 1857. Below is a quote taken from researcher George Dudding, who states the year and provides a rather vague explanation of events. An old letter dated 1857 tells of an encounter in the United States with a large wolf which could stand upright and walk like a man. There is no evidence of an 1857 encounter, and further digging yields the result that the commonly cited and mentioned 1857 encounter is either an encounter described so vaguely no research can be gathered from it, or it is a retelling of the well-known 1887 published encounter from the traveling Michigan Sunset Coast American Travel Guide publication. This error, as far as can be researched, was not done on purpose by any published parties, but was a publishing error. That was cited and recited by additional sources that misconstrued the facts without proper research. 1987 Northern Michigan Encounter of Luther. Back in August of 1987, the owners of a small wooden cabin claimed that their cabin had been attacked in the night by a large animal they presumed to have been a bear. Unsure of what the animal was and needing information surrounding the vandalism to provide to insurance companies, the owners then contacted the Department of Natural Resources from the Baldwin, Michigan field office. After waiting around for some hours, several investigators from the field office arrived at the cabin and claimed that they were interested in examining the damage to the cabin to verify the animal attacks. Although the owners originally believed the large animal to have been a bear, the gathered evidence from the game warden's investigation proved that the animal scratches were not from a typical bear vandalism and was most likely something else entirely. According to the Department of Natural Resources, the tracks and the claw marks left behind surrounding the cabin and near the nearby muddy pathways were footprints of large dog tracks. On the windows of the cabin were prints of equally large muddy pores that went as high as 7 feet, and different parts of the roof of the cabin appear to have also had evidence of muddy footprints. Additionally, closer examination showed that the frames of the windows and the doorway appeared to have been chewed in an attempt of the animal to have gained entrance to the cabin in the night, a behavior uncommon of wolves in the region. Even more peculiar, areas of the footprints seemed to reach up on the wall past 7 feet in height, meaning that the animal would have had to walk on its hind legs and be at a height exceeding 7 feet when standing. An official quote on the event is recorded as follows. Upon closer scrutiny, it was determined that the damage to the cabin had been done by a very large dog. It appeared that the animal had chewed into the wood frames of the building and the door screening in an attempt to gain entrance to the cabin. Officers found huge dog tracks all around the cabin, poor prints on the windows and deep grooves made by a dog's teeth in the wood around the door and window. The damage inflicted was found to not be the work of an average dog, but one which was very large and capable of standing up and reaching 7 feet up to the higher window levels. It didn't take long for the story of the cabin's destruction by a large dog to have reached the nearby town, with many of the locals soon making their way up to the cabin to see the evidence of the attack for themselves. Many of the local hunters and tour guides supported the claims that the prints and the attacks had to have been made by a large dog or wolf, and that the scratch marks were atypical of a standard bear attack. Several hunters offered to hunt down the creature for the owners of the cabin, whereas others believed that an ancient dire wolf could have been the culprit. The Manistee, Michigan Clay Bank Lake sighting, although the story had been considered a part of the local legends, one of the more popular recited stories of the Michigan Dogman comes from the small town of Manistee, Michigan. According to the locals, 2 fishermen had been relaxing on their small fishing boat out in the middle of Claybank Lake when they encountered a humanoid creature swimming next to them. At first, the men believed that the animal could have been one of their dogs that they left back at the cabin located on the shore of the lake. Mostly due to the fact that the sun was beginning to set, and the lake is far enough away from any major sources of light to prevent any light pollution from reaching out to where they were, making it difficult to see the shape of the animal. Now worried that one of their hunting dogs could have been in danger, the men slowly began to navigate their boat towards the creature to help reel it in. However, as the creature got closer, it became apparent that the monster appeared to have had the head of a dog, but the body of a man covered in fur. Quickly, the men pulled up their oars and began paddling away as fast as they could from the creature, but were unable to get away in time. As the monster started to enter the boat, one of the fishermen grabbed his paddle and started striking the creature several times in the head, causing it to let out a loud screech that caused the monster to react violently and begin snapping at the men. It wasn't long before the other fisherman joined in the attack and began striking the monster with his oar as well. After several minutes of the monster struggling to enter the boat and being hit with the wooden paddles, the monster re-entered the water and swam away. The 1975 encounter. According to local residents within the small town of Alpena, Michigan, a notable encounter with the dogman creature was recorded in the town back in 1975 when 3 men went fishing along the Thunder Bay River. While riding in a canoe traveling past the Evergreen Cemetery, the men claimed to have noticed what they described as a large dog running alongside their canoe at the river's bank, not far away from them. As the animal followed them for a few minutes, the men were unconcerned and believed the animal to have possibly been nothing more than a stray dog, given the fact that it was alone and wolves and feral dogs will typically travel in a pack. After redirecting their attention away from the dog and focusing on the winding river, the men then heard a loud splash and turned to see that the animal had jumped into the water and began chasing after their canoe. Believing that the animal was a stray dog and fearing that it would drown in the river, men began to paddle towards the shore of the riverbank to allow the dog to join them on their trip. However, as the men moved closer to shallow waters, the creature then stood up on 2 legs and began sprinting towards the men. The 3 men described the creature as being the height of about 7 feet, having a humanoid body entirely covered in fur and the face of a wolf. Terrified at the sight of the creature, the men immediately began paddling to get to deeper waters and travel further down the river away from the creature. Although the men were paddling as hard as they could down the river, the animal continued to gain speed on the men and got within a few feet of them, well within direct line of sight. After a few more seconds, the creature gave up on the chase and the men fled the area. Once they returned to town, the 3 men told local residents about their encounter, to which the residents claimed that legends of such a creature have been around since as long as the towns have. 1961 Night Watchman encounter in Big Rapids, Michigan. Originally reported back in 1961, a night watchman working for a manufacturing facility located near the small town of Big Rapids within the state of Michigan claimed to have had an encounter with a large humanoid creature that appeared to have had the head of a wolf. According to the night watchman, the factory that he was working security for was located between Big Rapids and the Chippewa Lake, a site where many past encounters with the dogman have been recorded. Given the fact that the factory resided next to the Hammersh Lake State Game Area Nature Preserve, located near Mecosta County, the night watchman was used to large animals journeying to the outskirts of the factory's border and causing damage to the property. It was because of the extensive amounts of damage that had been recorded over the past weeks to the factory's fencing and buildings that the night watchman added a foot patrol to his typical duties, to help scare off any animals that were lurking around the property. It was then, at around 3 in the morning, while performing his perimeter foot patrol, that the night watchman claimed to have heard a series of strange sounds coming from the adjacent wildlife preserve located just outside the boundaries of the factory's light. Believing that the sound could have been the screeching of an injured animal, the night watchman continued his foot patrol and completed his usual rounds by walking around the perimeter of the facility several times before taking his break. Once on his break, the night watchman claimed to have crossed the road to a small, company-provided residence to grab himself a cup of coffee, as he believed that his nerves could have been getting to him due to all of the surrounding peculiar sounds that he would later remark sounded unlike anything he had ever heard before in his life. After getting his cup of coffee, the night watchman became curious as to the source of the sounds and so stepped out onto the porch of the residence to take another glance of the surrounding wilderness. Once outside, the watchman claimed to have noticed what he described as movement near one of the chain-link security fences that wrapped around the facility and so immediately went to investigate. Originally, the night watchman assumed that perhaps a person could have been responsible for the strange sound and was now trespassing on the property to break into the facility at night to steal some goods. Fearing that he would have an encounter with a group of thieves, the night watchman ran over to the chain-link fence with his weapon drawn from its holster and shouting at the source of movement to stop. However, once the night watchman reached the source of the movement, he realized that it was not a person trying to break into the chain-link fence, but an unknown type of creature that was standing upright and appeared to have had the head of a dog. Although wildlife officials claim that the animal was most likely a hungry bear attracted to the smells of the factory, as bears have heads similar to the shape of a dog, and if the night watchman claimed that the upper torso of the animal was clearly visible and appeared to have broad, man-like shoulders and a large chest while standing at a height of about 6 to 7 feet while covered from head to toe in brownish-gray fur. Once it became obvious that the intruder was not a man or group of men, the night watchman ran inside to grab a 35mm camera to take a photo of the creature as proof of the dogman legends. When the night watchman came back out, he saw the animal leaving and walking on all four limbs and took a series of pictures of the creatures while using a long exposure shutter speed given the low light of the area. Shortly after taking the pictures, the creature stood back up on two legs, standing near a light post, and then dropped back on all four limbs and ran back into the nearby wilderness. The picture would end up being printed in the local newspaper claiming that the creature was a humanoid sighting. Today, the official explanation of the encounter claims that the animal was nothing more than a local starving bear. Mysterious creature seen above Brazil. These photographs have appeared online showing what looks like a giant glowing bird above Brazil. Residents quickly started taking photographs of the bizarre creature, but at the time couldn't explain what it was that they were seeing. Those who saw it said that the photographs appear to show a large object that can be seen emitting light. The first sighting was made back in October of 2018. Some believe that the object in question saying that in recent years, bizarre lights have been seen throughout various cities. It's because of sightings like this that Brazil has become known as a hotspot. This sighting has been posted to various social media pages that investigate strange objects, and some have said that although they didn't see the craft, they have seen something similar. Some have even suggested it could be a thunderbird, although the name might not indicate a single species. The thunderbird is the appearance of a large single bird seen flying overhead in different parts of the world. These sightings and birds were given the name of thunderbird as they seem to share a lot of characteristics, more noticeably their size, to that of the ancient Native American traditions and mythologies surrounding a large flying creature referred to as the thunderbird. However, this has left many people wondering if the creature is a modern-day sighting of a pterosaur, that it's a single species of the thunderbird as seen and recorded in ancient Native American legends. Additionally, the thunderbird is described as being the size of a man when standing upright, with a wingspan over 16 feet in length. This has left many researchers working around the clock to calculate its possible flight patterns and capability of sustained flight given its size. It's due to this that it has been posited by researchers that the thunderbird originally because the creature would follow the upwind drafts created during a large thunderstorm to sustain their weight, size, and movement, very similar to the way modern-day eagles ride up the side of mountain currents to gain height with little work required on their part. A normal-sized bird would be torn up to unsustainable heights during a thunderstorm and might find themselves in unstable flight positions, causing them to be thrown to and fro. However, a bird the size of the thunderbird would be able to stabilize their flight due to their weight and size, even when affected by such forces. Oddly enough, the area of the Bridgewater Triangle, of which is an area that encompasses roughly 200 square miles and the majority of southeastern Massachusetts located in the United States, had the majority of sightings surrounding the creature known as the thunderbird, the same area that many Native American tribes have reported encountering the creature during their time. This has left many wondering if the thunderbird is a native undiscovered species of bird that is less supernatural in nature and is merely endangered in their population. Mysterious aswang. Definitely seen as the strangest creature encountered, the aswangs are an almost impossible to categorize and understand mysterious creature that has left many locals across the Philippines terrified for their lives. Given the fact that the country is often torn in tribal warfare and other incidents surrounding actions of the government and revolutions involving the people, this has led to a number of stories surrounding areas of the Philippines housing people that are not quite human. According to families at the center of revolutions, they have reported that on the outskirts of forests located away from larger population centers, there appears to be a grouping of inhuman creatures that are impossible to explain and are a great threat to the people. These creatures are known as the Aswang and have been described as appearing human and establishing small human towns away from society. Although they might appear completely normal at first, the creatures are described as being completely mute in human form and will run to hide when seen. If they get away, they will begin to transform and grow large wings similar to that of a bat and can separate from their lower halves as they fly through the air. Interestingly enough, legends surrounding the creature have spread all across the Philippines, including stories of people being followed by the creatures. Many residents across the Philippines have reported encountering these creatures during the night, saying that their appearance alone is enough to terrify you. The United States is no stranger to mysterious creatures, and Major General Edward Lansdale used the story of a mysterious vampire-like creature known as the Aswang to his advantage. These creatures were said to be humanoid in appearance and had the ability to fly. Lansdale spread rumors that Aswangs were loose in the jungle and that they were going to attack enemy soldiers. All of this unfolded during World War II in the Philippines, and to ensure that it was believable, Lansdale's men captured an enemy soldier and drained the blood from his body, leaving the soldier in the forest so that he would be found, and thus ensuring that the enemy soldiers would believe the claims that a vampire-like creature was on the loose. The Major General said the following: "To the superstitious, the Hook battleground was a haunted place filled with ghosts and eerie creatures. A combat Siwar squad was brought in. It planted stories among town residents of an Aswang living on the hill where the Hooks were based. After giving the stories time to make their way up to the hill camp, the Siwar squad set up an ambush along the trail used by the Hooks. The origin of the creature is not known, but various stories and encounters have been shared throughout the years, with eyewitnesses saying that the creature resembles a human with a messed-up face, has large protruding teeth, and has the ability to fly while carrying a human." Paul Michael Lemaitre disappears in the middle of a crowd. On the 4th of July, back in 2012, in the small town of Seward, Alaska, the 97th annual marathon race known as Mount Marathon was well underway when one of the runners, a man by the name of Paul Michael Lemaitre, appeared to have suddenly vanished while standing out in the middle of a crowd of fellow runners. Regarded as one of the most bizarre and unexplainable disappearances of Alaska, Mount Marathon officials have been struggling to answer the cause of the disappearance of Paul Lemaitre and how it would have been possible for one of the most experienced runners to have vanished while taking a routine exercise through a familiar area. According to the Missing 411 report, Paul Michael Lemaitre was 66 years old at the time of his disappearance and was considered to be one of the most experienced runners of the event. Even more peculiar, the Mount Marathon race is considered to be one of the oldest and most safe races across the United States, with the marathon first beginning back in 1915 without a single known injury or disappearance in the 97 years since its conception. The marathon is described as being a 3-mile combination run that takes runners up Seward, Alaska's highest point of elevation of 3,000 feet, before coming back down to the base of elevation at sea level. The starting point for the race begins within downtown of Seward, located at the corner of 4th Avenue and Adams Street, winds up to the nearby mountain summit, and winds back down to end at the corner of 4th Avenue and Washington Street. After spending the entire year preparing for the race, Paul told his family that he had planned on taking his time with the race, hoping only to get a respectable time in placing and not concerning himself with racing against the other runners and possibly hurting himself. Considering the fact that Paul was described as being incredibly physically fit by his co-workers at the military joint base Elm, it seemed trivial to his family that he would be able to finish the race with a solid time. Additionally, the fact that Paul worked as a counselor at the military base, focused on helping guys leaving the military reintegrate into civilian life, assisting with health and preparing for every possible problem they might occur, helps to demonstrate that Paul Lemaitre was known for being thoroughly prepared for any situation he may have found himself in, as well as the fact that had he been suffering from anything, he would have received the proper help he needed. Unfortunately for Paul, shortly after registering for the Mount Marathon race and receiving his bib number 548, any sign of him would completely disappear off of the face of the earth only a few hours after the race began. It was at around 3 in the afternoon that Paul's family claimed to have last seen him as he was standing at the starting line when the race began. Several hours later, sometime around 6 in the evening, an official race timing crew had spotted Paul ascending the mountain and decided to do a short interview with him to be used in the article for the race later in the day. Given the fact that he appeared to have been in great shape and quite talkative, the lead timer asked Paul several questions concerning the difficulty of the race and how he felt. Paul, without hesitation, stated that he was feeling great and was hoping to finish the race in the next few hours at a brisk walking pace. 5 days later, on the 9th of July, the officials at the race would publish the following article surrounding the encounter. According to the chamber, a race timing crew stationed at the top of the mountain began its descent about 5:45 in the afternoon. The lead timer, who was not named in the statement, spoke with Paul at about 6 when he was nearing the mountaintop. The timer had reported that Mr. Lemaitre verbally confirmed that he wanted to continue. He looked good and did not demonstrate any sign of distress or physical or emotional concern and was moving slowly and steadily up the mountain. End quote. After reviewing the segment, it was believed that Paul was the last runner to reach the mountain and should have been within view of a group of other runners and officials watching over the race. Several minutes after Paul was last seen by the race timing crew, a bizarre accident would take place on the descent of the mountain trail, though few details surrounding the event are known. According to official reports, 2 runners had fallen in an area that caused them to have suffered from serious injuries, though the extent of the injuries are not known. Worried about losing their proud history of maintaining one of the safest races, the Chamber of Commerce of Seward immediately began investigating the area, but were unable to find a sufficient answer for why the runners bizarrely turned off into a random area and seemed to have jumped from a mountain's ledge. The 2 runners, having suffered injuries at 2 separate locations in 2 separate incidents, were unable to remember why they had fallen in the given areas. It was at around 8 in the evening when Paul's wife contacted the race officials and let them know that Paul had not come back from the run and was expected to be the only runner left on the trail. She then explained that Paul had been expected to finish the race at around 7:30 in the evening, was running more than 30 minutes later than his expected finishing time. Due to the strange nature of the previous runner's injuries, the race officials did not hesitate another moment and contacted the Seward Fire Department and the Alaska State Troopers to begin an immediate search of the mountain to locate Paul and return him safely to his family. Oddly enough, despite several hundred volunteers working over the course of the next several hours, checking every pathway of the mountain, the teams were unable to locate any sign of even after employing the use of helicopters equipped with special thermal imaging and state-of-the-art cameras. No new discoveries were made. Oddly enough, the search teams claimed that as soon as they were dispatched in the area, a sudden heavy fog blanketed the entire mountain. Throughout their search, the teams came across 2 black bears that ran away at the sound of people, but no other form of wildlife was seen in the area. After a team of search and rescue dogs were following Paul's scent, but then suddenly seemed to lose it halfway down the mountain, search and rescue efforts were strained beyond their limits and no new ideas to help recover Paul were available. On the 9th of July, back in 2012, the local newspaper, the Alaska Dispatch, ran an article that described the search efforts with the following paragraph. Hundreds of volunteers have been involved in the rescue operation, including the Alaska Mountain Rescue, Nordic Ski Patrol, Alaska Search and Rescue Dogs, Bear Creek Volunteer Fire Department, National Park Service, Seward Police and Fire Department, the Air National Guard, Alaska State Troopers, and many Seward residents, as well as racers who returned to Seward to help with the search. No sign of Paul Michael was found over the week's search, and to this day, no one knows what could have happened to the runner. The official explanation behind Paul's disappearance claims that as Paul was ascending the mountain, his poor eyesight may have caused him to confuse the running pathway with a previous year's running pathway, as the Mount Marathon race was known for changing its paths every year to provide veterans with a new challenge, and could have caused him to have run off the side of the mountain in an area where his body has yet to be found. The number of people who go missing each year can vary depending on the country, region, or circumstances. However, according to the latest data from the International Commission on Missing Persons, an estimated 600,000 people are reported missing every year in the United States alone, which translates to around 1,600 people per day. Globally, the numbers are even higher, with the International Criminal Police Organization estimating that at least 8 million people are reported missing each year worldwide. It's worth noting that not all missing person cases are reported, so the actual number of missing people may be even higher.